Back once again with 2 p.m. with the trigger. Happy afternoon, and hopefully it's a gorgeous day for you and things are going extremely well. We're back once again with more media insights, tips, and tricks. We want to help you as CEOs, executives, better shine on camera and shine on stage to elevate you and your brand authority. And today we're going to talk about interviews. I'm going to give you 3 strategies to better help you stay on topic during interviews because very often we get distracted very easily. I've done thousands upon thousands of interviews. As a host, I get confused. I get lost in interviews sometimes. I fully admit that sometimes we get lost in the story and the narrative, and we don't really hit the mark of what we want to really talk about. What was the real purpose of the interview? As a guest, as someone who's going to be interviewed, you want to make sure you stay on point to get your message out there because you don't want your message to get lost, get diluted, taken over, misunderstood. You want to really use every interview you can to better get your message out there. So I'm going to give you 3 strategies today to better help you do that because you do get lost. And especially if you do multiple interviews. Did I say that in this interview? Did I not say that in this interview? It happens. So first of all, the number one tip I want to give you is you need to learn to listen carefully. Listen carefully as you talk, as you get interviewed. The number one skill you need to do is listen better during your interviews. I'm telling you, you're going to be thinking ahead to what you want to answer. You're going to be thinking about the next question in line. You're going to be thinking, hey, I gave them 5 starter questions and they're not using any of my starter questions. Your mind is going to be racing. Maybe there was technical difficulties. Maybe you didn't have the easiest connection getting in for the interview. Whatever it is, stop at the very beginning and tell yourself, I'm going to listen better. Listening is one of the most important part of doing any interview. Sometimes interviewers may ask questions that seem unrelated to anything else connected to your main point. Okay, if that happens, you got to be listening for it. You got to listen that they took a step here, took a step there, and they're not tracking with your overall brand, your overall message. And it's up to you to hear that and recognize that. And in those cases, find a way to bridge the gap to bring it back to the conversation and what you really were going to talk about. They had you slated to be on the show for some reason. They pre-planned the topic, the discussion, they branded it, marketed. So make sure you stay on topic for what you're going to talk about. It's up to you to do that. Active listening. This means you're going to talk less and listen more. Interview people, hosts, TV people, podcast people, if you're listening, I want to tell you, you need to do the very same thing because what your guest says is just as important as what you ask them. You need to stay in tune with your guests, and the guests need to stay in tune with the host. So if you're being interviewed, well, the first thing you want to do is tell yourself, I'm going to listen. And that means no distractions. There's no cell phones, no incoming messages. Silence everything around you so you are right here. You want to be right in the moment so you can completely listen to the host, to the introduction, to the commercial breaks. You want to be hyper vigilant on listening. And again, if it does go away, this is your chance to reclaim it, bridge it, mention, acknowledge what they said, and mention what they said, and bring it back around carefully to what you really wanted to say. Politicians do this all the time. They do a great job. Not a big fan of all the head talking and politician stuff, but they do a great job of redirecting. Why? Because they're active listening. That's number one. Make sure you get that set. Now, stay calm, stay composed. No matter what happens, you need to stay calm and composed because things are going to happen. The best interview people, things go awry. Good to see you. Stroke Media back in the way. And Aaron Avila is back with us again. Good to have you here, Aaron. But stay calm and stay composed as you go through this. Sometimes microphones go bad, sound effects. if they're trying to bring on a soundbite, or they're trying to roll a B-roll tape, backup material to support you, things don't always go well. And you need to stay calm and cool. No matter what happens, you're going to smile. You're going to respond well. If they butcher your name, which with a name like Bontrager happens all the time, I give them phonetic spellings. I talk to them in advance. I tell them, hey, you can even use trigger if you want and just go with that. It's part of the brand. It's not part of it. And people still don't get it right. Instead of getting frustrated about those things, have a natural comeback to make it easier. With a last name like Bontrager, there's Bontrager Bicycles. So I can always come back, hey, by the way, you may know about Bontrager Bicycles. I'm not that Bontrager. And I can flip it around, make a little light joke, get my name pronounced right, but I maintain composure. There's a lot of things that can go crazy that can irritate people. I see it on nightly news. You're supposed to go to a commercial. The news anchor is sitting there, and they don't go to the commercial, and they're frozen. They don't know if they should talk again. Just keep smiling. You need to maintain composure. It's one of the most important things of doing an interview. Find a way to bridge those gaps and those conversations that are awkward, that are unrelated. I had someone in one of my interviews one time ask about my personal dating life. Was not on the script, was not on the plan, none of their business. So I had to make a joke, have a little bit of fun, and then get it back on relationships, communication. And then I slid it back into media. That's how you stair-step things back without sounding like a jerk, because you don't want to offend the host. You want to keep it centered on the real topic, but you can't ignore all the nonsense. Sometimes you have to admit it. But that's where you maintain composure and make sure you're following along. Vivian King is dropping on in for a little bit here today. Vivian, great to see you. And Vivian knows some of this stuff. She's been around the interview time just a little bit. And, even with, she says it's King like royalty. There you go. Again, she understands the pronunciation of names, the way things go wrong, and you could get upset. And I've seen people I told you before, I told you again, I'm going to tell you right now, film is rolling, audio's rolling. You don't want to come unraveled during an interview. Find a way to keep composure and make sure you just steer the conversation you want to steer it. So that's going to take me to our next one. Is one of the biggest problems I see people on interviews do. They talk. Now, I know you want to talk during your interviews. I know you want to highlight your success, but you talk too much. You talk too fast. You want to make it concise. The best thing you can do during an interview is they ask you a question to avoid going off the rails, to avoid going down that rabbit hole that nobody cares about. Keep your answer concise. I coach when I work with executives and CEOs, and I help them understand 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and at the most 90 seconds for an answer. Whether it's a story, whether it's an illustration, I don't care what it is. Your answer needs to be 30, 60, 90. And at 90 seconds, nobody cares anymore very often. Now, but you do want to phrase it in a way, you want to give answers that leads to the next question. So you can continue with the story. You can add more clarity to what you're saying, but you don't want to dominate the interview. Sometimes when I have a keynote speaker, they will jump in and they think they're presenting their keynote. They will answer one question and they don't stop for 7 minutes. What am I to do with that as an interview? How is that a discussion? I tell them before, please don't go into presentation mode. They go in the presentation mode anyways. So as a host, I have to find a way when they take a breath, I jump in immediately to chop it up and turn it into an interview. Help out your own interview and learn to talk concise. That's why sound bites are so important. Learning how to do sound bites is so very important. The sound bites have got to sound natural. It sound like it just rolled off your tongue and something you accidentally stumbled on, even though you prepared in advance to do it. But it's a concise soundbite, gives a great answer to the question, and the host and the producers are ecstatic. They will mark it, label it, pin it, and they will replay that soundbite because you were so concise and so clear. Now, one of the things you want to do through all of your interview, if you're taking notes today, take notes on this. Practice eye contact. Stay with your host. Again, audio podcasts, active listening. Stay with your host. Do not be doing an interview and scrolling on your websites and replying to emails while you're doing an audio interview. Everything stops on camera. Maintain eye contact. I try to stay right here for you every day. You want to talk to people one-on-one and feel like they're a part of the conversation. That's why it's important to learn these media skills on camera. Use positive body language. This all goes to that staying calm, communicating, being concise. Sometimes you can say less and just simply readjust, strike a pose. It's amazing that this stuff works. But if you watch talk shows, interview discussions, the daytime talk shows, you will see people do exactly what I'm describing, and it comes alive even better. So Aaron's talking here about I do a private podcast meeting to confirm the topics and confirm what we're going to get into. Yes, a backstage pre-production, final tech call, whatever you're going to want to call it. You want to let them know we're on task. Here's what you got. And here's where we're going to go today. Is there any variation? And I also include in there, Aaron, I ask them what topics you don't want me to touch on. There may be a breaking news. There may be a special story in their lives that right now is off the table. You're not going to talk about it. Respect them as a host, as the same thing as a guest, in order to protect yourself and stay concise. Let the host know where you want to go and where you want to be here today. But that brevity, that short voice, those short answers are very, very important. Make sure you stay on target. And again, you can always pivot, redirect, whatever you want to call it during any interview. Let me go back to the active listening for a lesson, because I know sometimes in the middle of an interview, you may not hear the question right. Or if they asked it a little bit awkwardly, make sure you clarify. Is this what you're asking me? I want to make sure it's right. It's okay to ask for clarification as a guest on an interview show. Oh, and during that listening portion, if the host asks you a two-part question, don't try answering two parts by memory. Hey, let me take question number one. We'll come back to question number two if you don't mind, Bob. And Bob, here's the answer to number one. Focus on one question at a time. Again, that brevity. If they ask you two questions, chop it up. After you're done with number one, go back and say, hey, Bob, I know you had a second question. Now, what exactly was that again? And then pick it up. You want to control your interview. Too many times, I see interview people not only go for double questions, they ramble on with the question, and they answer the question before you had a chance to answer. But that's a whole different 2 p.m. with the trigger conversation. Hey, these are just 3 simple strategies to help you manage and stay on topic with interviews. If you're a CEO, if you're an executive, if you're an entrepreneur that's getting on shows and podcasts, and you're wondering why you're not connecting quite as much, these may be part of the reasons why, and take time to review and work on this. As always, if you want to know how we can help you out at Rock the Stage Media, have a free consultation with me. Let's talk about what you're doing, what you want to do, and how we can help you level up. Interviews are powerful, powerful tools to help you get your message out, to elevate you and your brand authority. But having a great interview is what you want to have. Learning how to stay on topic, be laser focused so people know here's who you are, here's what you do, here's what your new project is. That's what you really want to do. You want to make sure they totally understand what they do. That's right. clarify what they want to talk about, Aaron. You know what? I go all the way back to my early childhood. Never assume anything. That's right. Chime in here once again with Vivian. She hates it when they don't know what the topic is. When they ask those 2 or 3 questions, they all run together. You can actually do a service to your host. You can actually help your host by helping them control their own interview by you knowing these skills. It's amazing how much control we have when we learn how to shine on camera and shine on stage and know these media skills. Again, hit that QR code. Let's talk further about how we can help you to elevate you and your brand by better learning how to rock this stage. Media skills are important. We live in a media age. Love to hear from you and answer your questions. Always do that, rich@richbontrager.net, rich@richbontrager.net. Until then, we'll see you back here tomorrow at 2 p.m. with The Trigger, give you more insights for you executive, your CEOs, trying to build your media empire.